Hey everybody, Bernie Gallerani with another episode of Success is Not Convenient. I love doing these topics. Really, the idea here is what can we do to help you grow as a human being based on what goes on inside your brain, your actions, your thought processes. And I had a really great question that came up to me yesterday, and I thought, man, what a great thought for some of you guys out there that are kind of struggling to grow, as we all are, right? We're all struggling to grow. And as the name of our podcast is Success Isn't Convenient, really the challenge of all of it is what goes on inside of our own head. And so when this question came about to me yesterday, I thought a lot about what that really means, like how much of the things that I feel are right to me are actually really true, or something that I actually believe is the truth that is just something that I made up. And so the question that was asked, and I'm going to read it because I want to make sure I get it right, is what stories are you telling yourself that keeps your production where it is? So your growth as a business owner, regarding what field you're in, is what goes on inside your brain that allows that to happen. Is it a true story that we have in our mind, or is it something that is made up? And so what's really interesting is it goes on to say, or ask the question that says, they don't even have to be valid or true to really make you believe they're valid or true. Wow, right? There's a lot to unpack here regarding where did you get your behavior from. There's a great story, I might mess it up, but I'll tell it the best that I can, about a young married couple who the wife was making a roast. And when she put the roast in the pan, she cut the ends of the roast off and baked it. And her new husband says to her, "Hey, honey, why did you cut the ends of the roast off?" And the wife says, "Well, that's how you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to cut the ends off." Husband asks, "Well, why?" And she says, "Well, I don't really know why. That's just the way it's supposed to be. That's how you cook a roast." So she calls her mom and says, "Hey," and she tells her mom the story. "Hey, why are we cutting the roast's ends off before we put it in the pan?" And her mother says, "Well, that's the way it's supposed to be." And then the daughter says, well, why? Why did we do it that way?" And she says, "I don't know. That's just the right way to cook the roast." She says, "That's the way your grandmother did it. That's the way I do it. And now obviously that's the way she does it. Call your grandmother and ask your grandmother that question." So she calls her grandmother and says, "Hey, I want to know why we cut the ends of the roast." And she says, "I don't understand what you mean." She goes, "Well, I was taught by my mom to cut the ends of the roast off before I put the roast in the pan." And the grandmother starts laughing and goes, "Well, that's really interesting." She says, "I only cut the ends of the roast off in my pan because my pan was too short to fit the roast." Do you see how the behavior pattern of what the belief system is, that there's truth aligned with a really misunderstanding of why the ends of the roast got cut off, right? Here's a question. What is it that you believe? What is it that's maybe driving you or not driving you, right? Because you can believe something that really drives you that may not be true. You could believe something that prevents you from moving forward that is not true, most likely not true. So what is it that you have in your life that actually prevents you from being successful? I heard one somewhat recently, I would say maybe a couple weeks ago, where I was talking with a business associate who was trying to make it in business. And in this particular conversation or coaching opportunity that I had with this particular individual, they were sharing with me an interesting, and I've heard it a lot, but it was an interesting conversation. And the person said, "Bernie, I'm not really all that motivated about money." I'm like, "Well, that's interesting. Tell me more about that." "Well, I mean, to me, money's not that important." Like, that's fair, right? There's a lot of things in life that are much more important than money, right? So I appreciate that. So as we dug into the conversation, what really came out was this individual doesn't really know what it's like to have any money. So it's easier to convince himself that money's not a motivator when he doesn't have the money. And so it's so as you dig into the lifestyle of people and the thought processes and where they live, how they live their life, of saying, well, I don't think that's really important to me. I guess the real question that some people probably have in their head, or maybe a thought that they have, is money creates what? So for some people that have money, they would say money creates security. Money creates a better lifestyle. Money creates more versatility of things that I can do, right? It gives me more options in life, right? So we can look at money maybe that way, like money's fantastic for these particular reasons. But others, and I would say a majority of others, look at it as saying, I'm not willing to put in the time. I'm not willing to be uncomfortable in order to learn how to do it. So what we do is we set back and we say to ourselves, really, I'm not money motivated. I'd like to find somebody who's actually made money who then says to me, money's not my purpose, or money's not something that I think's valuable. And you'll find mainly as anybody who's earned money has found some value in having it. They may not be fully money motivated. Maybe they just are passionate about their job or what they do. They like the routine that they're in. They like the fact that growing a business is exciting to them. You don't have to be money motivated to have a great business that makes a lot of money. But we have to also be careful of what we tell ourselves, because we can tell ourselves we don't want to make money. We can tell ourselves that I'm not willing to do that. We can tell ourselves that I'm not willing to give something up. I can tell ourselves that, hey, listen, that's not all that important to me. But is that really the issue? So this is what I want to dive into a little bit today, and ask yourself, are you truly not interested in having a better life? Are you truly not interested in having more financial security? Are you really not interested in having an opportunity in your life to where a lot of things are possible for you based on the work that you do and the business that you are building, right? If you're saying, hey, Bernie, I think I really would like an opportunity to grow my business or an opportunity to grow my wealth, then the next question is, what are you doing and who are you hanging out with in order to have that happen? He says in these notes, like, even though you have a belief, because he says right here, they don't really have to be valid or true. Is there real truth in your belief system? Or is it something that you made up just based on how you think it all works? What I learned in my life, I grew up obviously with not having money. Always wanted to have money. I mean, so I guess I was somewhat money motivated. I didn't look at it as money. I looked at it more as, how do I better myself and get myself out of the situation that I'm in? Money just showed up based on the passion I had to move from where I was to where I wanted to go. And I'm in a gradual process of that. So there's no end in sight. I can't see that ending. But the question that I have to ask myself is it for money? Maybe because from the life that I had to convincing and retraining my brain through reading and educating and then being influenced by a lot of other people, I started to realize that having a level of success was easier than living in poverty. I'm going to say that again. Being a person who is growth-minded, changing who I was, having a vision of how I wanted the life to be like or look like, that took work. Not just to have more financial opportunities, but to have a better life for the family in which I was responsible for paying for. So you can look at it like this for those that are watching. You are fully responsible for the life that you have right now, right? If you look yourself in the mirror, and I think if you look in the mirror and you ask this question to yourself is, why are things the way they are for me? Why do all of these things, maybe not so positive, happen to me? Or why do I have a really great life, but I want a better life and I can't grow from that? The real question is to you, how settled in are you with you? That's a fun question, right? To look yourself and go, how settled in am I? How settled in am I on me, on my behavior, on my action, right? My mentor, Mike Ferry, says a great joke on stage. And he says, you have to really be honest with yourself about yourself, because this is one life that you get to live that is fully dependent on being better or worse based on the fact of the decisions that you make. Now, let's take a step back. There are people out there that have unfortunate incidents that happen to them. I get that, and I'm not talking about that situation. I'm not talking about people that have disabilities, issues with mental disabilities and things like that. That's not really where I'm going with this. I'm going with the people that are watching this video that say, hey, I want my life to be better, but I have these obstacles. I think we need to look ourselves in the mirror. And so my mentor, Mike Ferry, says this: you want reality. Reality is standing in front of the mirror and taking off all your clothes and looking at yourself and go, that's reality. But yet most of us actually live our life where we're covering reality up. And so this is an interesting question, right? Is we're too busy covering up our imperfections in our life. We're hiding them away from other people so we can feel good about ourselves, even though deep down we're really not okay. We're really not a person that's growing. We're really not a person that's fulfilled. We're really not building relationships like we like to. We're really not growing financially. We dream of it. We have fantasy land thinking that this would be a great life to have, but yet we don't take any other action. And in that question, he asks or says, it doesn't matter because it doesn't have to be valid or true. It's only true to you, but it doesn't mean it's true to me. Does that make sense? And we can dwell and live in a life that is unfulfilling because we're in a process of continually downing ourselves and believing we're not worthy and believing good things don't happen to us, right? I got an opportunity to spend an amazing weekend with my mentor this last weekend, and it was unbelievable. I mean, he's a very wealthy person. I got to spend 3 days with him, stayed in his home, flew on his private jet, had a wine and dined weekend with him and some other great friends and family members. And you look at this and go, wow, he has really pulled himself from where he was to where he's become. And when you look at his background, he didn't grow up with money either. But he always say this to me, and I've been working with him for 20 years. He's been my mentor for 20 years. And he says, poverty is a choice. Being emotionally disconnected to who you want to be is a choice based on whatever belief system you're grabbing onto. You're taking ownership of that, right? The young married couple who had the roast in the pan said, well, this is how it's done. The mom says, this is how it's done. The grandmother says, no, I just didn't have a pan big enough, so I had to cut the ends off it. But yet they can buy into this generationally. So here's an interesting question or thought for you, is what are you hooking onto because of the environment in which you grew up in? What are you attached to that says, this is who we are? This is who I am. Good things don't happen to me. I had a family member, and I may have mentioned this on another video, who divorced a long time ago. We'll call it 15 years ago now. And about 2 years ago, I was having a conversation. It was about 13 years into this divorced relationship that lots of repetitive conversation about how this person was treated, the dysfunctions of the relationship, and on and on and on and on and on and on and on. So finally, I had a conversation with this person, and I said, why are you living that every day? That was over 13 years ago. And she kind of looked at me and said, wow, I guess, I said, because what you're doing is you continually keep bringing up what has been finished for 13 years. You know anybody like that? Somebody who continues to tell the stories, right? I have friends of mine that you go to high school with them, or you go to college, whatever. I didn't go to college, but you go to college with them, you hear their stories, and they're like, yeah, I remember when our college days, right? Or our high school days. Well, who cares? Because you're going back into memories that you felt really good in your high school, your college years. What about making amazing memories right now? What about having a life right now that you're like, wow, that was an amazing weekend. I just had an amazing weekend with my mentor. I came back and told everybody, man, I had the most amazing weekend. I got to experience something that very few people really get to experience. And you look at this and go, well, how, like, gosh, I don't even think about what happened when I was young. Who cares? My life is so much better today. And the question is, why isn't your life better? And if it is, how does it even become better? How does your life even become better? And so as we've said before in other videos, who are you hanging out with? Who's influencing you? Who's getting you excited? Or who are you allowing to bring yourself down? Who are you talking to that is repetitive in conversations that have nothing to do but negativity that's bringing that conversation to your brain, right? Positive energy is a lot more difficult to have than negative energy. And here's why, is most people live in negative energy. Most people live in the mishaps. Most people live in what they don't have. Most people live in what could have been. Most people live in the past. I think that living in the past is, or talking about the past is okay, right? Connecting the dots from point A to B to C to D is perfectly fine. But is there growth in that process? Are you growing from A to B, B to C, C to D? Is there measurable differences in your life? Or are you telling the same story you told 20 years ago? Maybe you're not old enough to tell stories 20 years ago. Maybe you're young enough to say, hey, listen, I don't want to be a person who continually keeps telling the same story of what could have been. Can you imagine, like, on your deathbed, someone asks you what you wish you had done in your life that you didn't? What thoughts maybe that you wish that you had changed about yourself, that you weren't powerful enough in your brain to get past the drama of life? I asked my mentor, being with him this last weekend, he celebrated his 80th birthday, and I asked him, based on his business relationship, what in your business would you do differently? And he goes, I don't know what I would do differently. He goes, I just put it all out there. I said, you're 80 years old. What is there about your life right now that you wished you wanted to do and you didn't do? And he goes, I've done everything I've wanted to do. I've never not done what I wanted to do. Can you say that? Can you say that about yourself? I mean, I certainly can't say that now, but it makes me really think about the things that I really want to do that I'm not doing because I believe I have time. But before we know it, that's going to run out, right? Because none of us really know when our time runs out. What is there that you want to do that something is holding you back from doing it because you have thoughts in your brain or your mind or your conditional thinking that aren't true? Like, there's a fantasy land conception idea of pain associated with something, and you're not doing it because you're like, oh God, I don't want to do that because look at all what could happen. Look what could happen if I try this, look what could happen. So what? Live a life that other people wish they had. And it's not that you can't, it's really that you won't. The reality is you won't do it. It's not that you can't do it. You're just not willing to put in the work to change the behavioral process because the comfort in who you are is what you've settled in with. Right? This is big, right? If you think about it, if you look at your life and you go into this going, okay, God, I'd like to have a new car. I'd like to have a better house. I'd like to have money in the bank. I'd like to have better friends. I'd like to have better relationships with people and family members. Then do it. I like to go on ski trips and jump out of airplanes and fly a plane and sail a boat around the world. Why not? Do it. Why are you waiting? I have a friend of mine, you'll love this, a really good friend of mine who retired at the age of 40, went and bought a boat, sailed, lived on the boat for a couple of years, came back, doing a little work, and then going to go back out again on another boat. But anyways, I love talking to him about his story. He bought a sailboat. He doesn't know how to sail. So he hires a guy and says, dude, I'm going to take my family out, sail around basically in the Bahamas and the Caribbean, and I'm going to go do whatever I want to do. I'm going to have my wife and my kids on this boat. I have no idea what I'm doing. Can you teach me to sail? And by the way, I don't got any time because I'm getting ready to leave. I'm going to jump on this plane or this boat, and I have no idea what any of this means, but you got to teach me stuff right now because I'm leaving very quickly. And I don't know if it was a week or a month or 2 months. So he said, we're going out for a couple of days and you're going to teach me everything you know about sailing. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if you went out and bought a boat and said, I have no idea about, but I better go hire a captain and have them show me how to do it? Do you think this particular person had an intention that was not going to be denied, regardless of any fear or apprehension that that person may have had? Not sure he did. But can you imagine just saying it doesn't really matter, right? Think about that. Think about how there is things in your life right now, as there is mine, that you haven't accomplished yet. Why haven't you accomplished it, and what is in the way? Because as they say right here, it says right here, they don't have to be valid or true. The only thing that matters is whether it's true to you, because it's the block in your mind if it's true and it holds you back. Having a conversation right before I came in to film this with one of the folks that work inside of my company, and they were fearful about something that didn't even happen. And they said to me, God, what about this or what about that? And here's what's really interesting. I said to them, yeah, but that's not happening. Yeah, but what if? Well, what if we get hit by a car and get killed 5 minutes after we leave the building? What are you worried about that for? What if? What if something happened to you? So what? Live your life fullest. It's better to have here lies Susie or Bob, and they put it all out there. Unfortunately, they got hit by a bus, but they put it all out here, and they lived an amazing life. They never held back. Or this is what they could have been, but they thought too small, and they were too scared based on the environment in which they grew up in, based on the things that they were told, based on how their parents treated their parents' life, and now the kids have adapted that mentality of trying to go through life, and yet they're just scared of everything. That's not fair. It's not fair to you. It's not fair to me. It's not fair to our families. It's not fair for the people who look up to us. So I'm going to leave with this thought today. And thank you guys for paying attention and listening. Your behavior pattern that you have is because you've chosen to do that based on what you've experienced from years and years and years and years ago. You're just holding on to it as my family member did in that divorce. And you've found value in your story and developed a near association to whatever fear that has showed up in your life that paralyzes you from moving your life forward. It does not have to be that way. And so what I'm hoping is that everybody gets uplifted from watching this and says, you know what, Bernie, I actually love that I can go out there and shed myself. And it's not easy, by the way. It's very difficult. It's not easy, but it's worth it. So shed the pain, shed the discomfort, shed the relationships that aren't working for you. Get rid of the stories in your head and start hanging out with people that are working and inspiring people every single day. And you watch how fast you will grow from who you were to who you ultimately want to be. I hope you guys have all found some value in this today. And if you have any questions or any topics you would like me to talk about, feel free to message me here on YouTube. Let me know if there's things you want me to talk about. I'll do a lot of research on these things before I bring these messages to you. I'll be interviewing people in these subject matters that we're talking about right now that are in line with our Success is Not Convenient podcast. And I want to say thank you to everybody. And remember, your life is worth it. Everybody have a great day.